Xena panel. Who's excited? Can I get a war cry? That's impressive. So we do have some questions prepared. We're going to do a conversation format. We'll do introductions, and then at the last 10 minutes, we'll do Q&A and open discussion with the audience. So if we get so excited we forget what's going on and lose track of time, you can remind us when it's 2:40. And so beginning with introductions, I'm Ariel Wetzel. I am a professor at University of Washington, Tacoma that teaches popular culture. And I'm also a Xenite. I am a latecomer to the fandom. I wanted to watch a lady show, and I found it in 2010. Remembered it from my childhood. I was like, I think they were gay on that show. And I fell in love and joined the fandom, started going to the conventions in 2012. The XenaCon ended in 2015, so now I go to Xenite Retreat, which is Xena-themed summer camp, which is pretty awesome. You'll hear more about it from Jackie. And I also run the fan site with a couple other fans called Xena Movie Campaign.
Hi everyone, I'm Aphrodite. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm a fangirl, part-time drag queen, part-time cosplayer, and a lifelong Xenite. I got into Xena when I was in the 4th grade. And Francesca Spinardi, who I had a crush on, told me she thought I'd like this show because it involves a girl kicking ass. And that's how I got into it.
My name is Rebecca, and what was the question?
Your introduction.
Yeah, so I have been a fan of Xena since it first aired. I was already in my 30s. Yeah, that's how it is. Oh, fan fiction. I write fan fiction.
Hi guys. My name is Kelly. I run an online queer entertainment hub, so we make sure that things are actually queer and not queerbait. I've been a fan of Xena since I was really little, and my mom loved Hercules and Xena, so I was like, okay, what's mom watching? And so I'd watch it. Missed the queer content completely. Got older, went, hey, you know, I think I like girls, and then I went back and watched it and was like, how does this? But that's about my extent in the Xena fandom for now.
I'm Linda Christ. I've been a Xena fan since about 1997, 98. I actually found Xena by reading Rebecca Hall's story, Heaven Down Here, online, and then watched the show. So if you saw me crying earlier, it's because I've never met her before. I'm not crying. So if you see me crying a lot, it's because I'm very emotional right now. But I went on to write fan fiction, published a couple of novels through publishers that came out of the Xena fandom. I was on the Xena Subtext Virtual Seasons writing staff. I was on the Orlando BardCon staff. And still just love Xena. It's my #1 true pair.
Hi, I'm Jackie Larson. I came to the Xenaverse after the show aired in 2002, and I went to my first convention, and my life has never been the same. I'm also a co-founder of the Xenite Retreat. We're in our 3rd year.
All right, thank you everyone. And has anyone not finished the series that's here? Okay, so we're gonna warn you before we do spoilers later in the panel if you want to flee out the room. Part of the reason we wanted to do this panel was to continue the show's legacy and convince folks who haven't watched it to go back, because this is our history of queer women in media. And so our first question to start us off is, what makes Xena and Gabrielle's relationship timeless?
They're gay.
Next question.
Well, what's great about the show is it's canonically AU, as in that during the series we have Xena and Gabrielle reincarnated into contemporary times, into, I guess, other settings and contexts, and in each of those contexts they're still soulmates. And so there's the belief that no matter how many times they die, no matter what point in time they're resurrected, they will find each other, even if they're in the wrong bodies. So.
Next one. So, we have a different range of experiences with the fandom here, from original fans who were involved in the fandom when the show was on the air to newer fans. And so I wanted to ask what it was like being a fan when the show was originally on. And this is kind of a three-part question. How did fans influence this show? And how was it that fans made it possible for Xena and Gabrielle to move from subtext to a canonical couple later in the series?
So, Xena began at about the same time that the internet became more widely used. A lot of us didn't have the internet at home, we only had it at work. And there was just nothing. There was nothing on TV. Xena was it. There were no lesbian couples on TV. There were no Facebook or Twitter or Tumblr or anything like that. And so once the internet became more active, we just found each other. We had Yahoo groups and forums and websites, just hundreds of websites. In fact, the way I found her story was I did a search for lesbian fiction, and the only thing that came up were dozens and dozens of Xena sites. And so it was really, it saved a lot of us. We found a community that we didn't have. Some people were from small towns where they had no gay friends. And then we had conventions, and you could go to conventions and make friends, and friends became family, and a lot of us are still here today because it became so much more than the show. You would sit online and wait for the next update on your favorite fan fiction story that was going to come out every Thursday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Or you would print out stuff on your work's boxes of copied paper and take it home, and know that probably owed them hundreds of dollars in paper. You would get on dial-up and spend 4 hours downloading a 6-minute video of Gabrielle and Xena doing their dance in Heart of Darkness. It was just an amazing time for this fandom to take off.
So I actually got introduced to Xena through people I had been writing with for Babylon 5, and that was, pre-internet, so we sent each other zines and things, and communicated by email. And then somebody was like, "Oh, Rebecca, you would love this show." And I'm into women warriors. I've always been into women warriors. I'm constantly looking for women warriors, and I saw that, so I watched it, and at first it was like, this is really ridiculous. And then I watched Callisto, that episode, and I saw the intensity of the relationship, that the campfire scene, and the whole Xena's quest for redemption, and it was just really compelling. And I was at a point in my own personal journey in healing where. So I wrote this story, Heaven Down Here, which was, I wrote it really for myself, because I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I felt like I wanted to rewrite my story. I had written a big Babylon 5 thing, which was like a fix-it fiction. But this was kind of like, I wanted to rewrite my own story, what would it have been like if I'd had some, really positive first sexual experience, first experience with, and I didn't realize it would resonate with so many people, which of course thinking back, it makes sense. So, it was put up on whatever little tiny little, proto internet we had, and I was getting hundreds of emails from survivors, and just saying I sobbed reading this, and thank you for writing this, and so I think I love the show. I mean, just the episode, and once I got past this is ridiculous, and got into it. I remember, I think it was the episode The Reckoning in the first season where Xena jumps up and breaks her chains. She's like in chains. And I would literally just put that on rewatch. Just because it was something, just watching it. I didn't even know why. I was like talking to my therapist, like, I don't know why. She's like, keep watching it. But I just keep watching it, you know. And so it was that kind of connection. But I think that I ultimately really got drawn in through fan fiction. You know, I went to, I think it might have been the first ClexaCon in San Francisco in '97. And then I went to, and I'd never been to a con before that, you know. And then I went to one, and the next one that was like in LA, and there was a whole separate like Bard convention, you know. And it was just, I was like, wow, we can write this show, we can rewrite this show, we can have our own, you know, our own show.
So your question was about what was it like being a fan of the show? So I watched the series, I guess, in two capacities. One where I didn't understand my sexuality, and one where I did. And I think there were definitely, so your experience as a fan watching the show depends on a couple of factors. First, how old were you? And did you watch the show after it already finished? Or were you watching it while it was airing? And if you're queer, did you go into the show knowing or have any sense of that, of your own identity? So I want to quickly read my diary entry from when I was 11 or 12. And so just forgive the writing. I was watching a rerun of Xena Warrior Princess, and I realized that Xena and Gabrielle were ready to die for one another. They were soulmates. Okay, so they seem kind of bisexual and attracted to each other and men. I want to know who my soulmate is. If I died, would my heart or spirit remain in the heart of my soulmate, just like Xena's soul belonged to the heart of Gabrielle? Could my soulmate be male or female? If that person was female, I don't know if I'd be a lesbian or just be best friends forever.
You're a very deep child.
And so I think, like, for a show like Xena, when you're a fan watching the show and you're sort of seeing yourself in the show and recognizing, wait, I want a connection like the connection Xena and Gabrielle has, but that's not what I'm seeing anywhere else. So I think I rewatched it again, after, you know, as an adult, the entire series the full way through, and I continue to rewatch it, and each time the show gets gayer. And each time the show gets gayer. And I just think to myself, like, if I hadn't watched that show at that point in time in my life, if Francesca Sbernardi didn't tell me to watch Xena Warrior Princess, how much longer would it have taken me to figure it out?
Can I respond to that too? Or did you? Yeah. So when I was watching Xena, I was already with my wife. We've been together 29 years. Our son was 2 years old. I've been out since I was 17, so it was not a coming out experience for me. But it was a completely validating experience. That same thing of like, oh, finally, you know, like a love story that I care about, you know. And but when I've introduced the show to some of my younger friends, and I make them sit down and watch it, you know, and they're just like, wait, was there any doubt that they were? And I'm like, yes. Oh my God! It's like, you're kidding me. But what about that kiss? I don't know. It's like, well, Xena needed water and like in real mouth, you know. And so, and as I'm hearing myself explain this stuff, I'm like, wow, you know, it's yeah.
I remember the first episode that I watched was Return of the Police Dog, and so first of all, wait, she's being a guy? What about those stories I just read? but then Xena kissed her on the lips at the end of the wedding, and then she talks about Xena on her honeymoon with her, because can we name her daughter Xena? She's alone. And then when Xena knelt down in that glade and prayed, I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, these women are in love with each other. You know, I have not seen anything like that on television before that I could relate to in that way.
Yeah, pass the Bechtel test of flaming.
And so this is a little bit different of a take for those of you just joining us. We do have a couple chairs up in the front if you want to have a seat. I also wanted to kind of pick up on how the fans influence the show side of the question. So Xena was the first show I watched where there was actual metatextual commentary embedded in the show that was engaging the fandom. And that happened really in season 2 with the Xena Scrolls so sorry, there's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's only season 2, so I don't feel that bad. Where at the end of the episode, we learned that the Xena show was based on these historic figures, so that the show was presenting itself as historical fiction. And we see that thread running through the whole series of the fans being engaged. We actually see Xena fans as characters on the show. And this is the first show that I know of where a fan fiction author was invited to come write episodes. If you're unfamiliar with Missy Good or Melissa Good, she is a fabulous writer, a novelist who came out of the Xena fandom, and her episodes are phenomenal.
Yeah, and this is also a show where the showrunners and the creators and writers were very much aware of the lesbian fan base, and I guess even the fact that people were writing fan fiction. And so when Melissa Good was invited to write 2 episodes in one of the later seasons, it was sort of, wow, they're paying attention to the content that fans are creating, and sometimes the content is really, really good and deserves its own episode.
And I think that's a lesson that showrunners today should take from Xena, because for those of you who are engaged in other fandoms, you know that sometimes the people who create the media we love are hostile or indifferent towards the fan fiction. And this was really a show where the creators embraced the fan work to the point of incorporating it into the show, and I think that's something that they really did right.
Yeah, I think they did such a good job of it. Several of the episodes were played out like fan fiction. It was, you know,
Play's the Thing, where Gabrielle's play about her life with Xena is very much, all the fan fiction tropes are in that episode. Right, so I wanted to move on to our next question, which is, what is the fandom's legacy today? We're focusing more on us as the Xena fans, how we've influenced fandom.
I'll start that one. So many of us don't know our place in the world, and I think that one of the things that Xena did for us is gave us a place to be found. And so many people come up and say, "I found my tribe. I found where I belong." And I think that's one of the greatest legacy that Xena has given us.
I also think it's really important to point out that, like was said, this is really before the internet, before you can go onto Tumblr and just hashtag Xena, and then it's just scrolling of all the stuff that you want to see. You know, you were lucky to find an AOL chat room or a Yahoo GeoCities site. Yeah, I made you. But the fact that, you know, I think that in a way, fandom helped create social media. And I've made this argument before, but, you know, without the reason for social media for engaging, it's not just, you know, you see your friends all the time. Social media is not necessary just for that. It's necessary to find a place in the world that isn't necessarily in your everyday hometown. So, and fandoms play such a huge role in that. So I think that fandoms help create society just as much as society helps create fandoms.
And I think it also really improved lesbian fiction, lesbian romance fiction. I don't know, because when I was younger, it was just crap, you know, just horrible. And there's still crap out there, but I mean, it was all crap. Like, you know, sorry, I hope I'm not offending you. Anyway, but there are some amazing writers that came out of that. And I know for myself, like, I was part of a listserv of writers, you know, some who I really looked up to, called, it's not so secret, called Saddlehorn. And it helped me as a writer a lot. You know, we would share drafts with each other, get feedback. There were published authors who were writing fan fiction. So I think that's a big part too.
So I think one of the reasons why I was so excited about this panel and like sort of understanding Xena in its broader social and popular cultural context is, you know, we're for ClexaCon. itself is a fan-driven enterprise. It's a fan-driven movement, and it's also like a very powerful ship that has motivated people to come together around like shared experiences. But before ClexaCon, there was XenaCon. And there were conventions of women, primarily queer women, coming together around a shared passion. And these were extremely driven fans.
The power.
Driven, yeah, the power, passion. Your courage will change the world. So XenaCon was really the first, if you think about it, the first ClexaCon, the first convention where queer women fans were coming together and making change together. So we have to think about the longer historical arc of queer women fandom. What does that look like? And Xena was the first. Yeah, Xena was the first.
Who here's been to a Xena convention? Oh yeah. You know what we're talking about. And so I've talked to so many people this weekend. For a lot of you, the first time you went to XenaCon, just looking around and thinking, wow, I'm not alone. Other people are like me and share this passion. And so I really feel like ClexaCon in many ways is the legacy of the XenaCons.
I haven't seen anything like this weekend since the big 2001 XenaCon. There were like, what, 8,000 people back on, and this is amazing. This is just amazing.
We ready for the next question? Okay, so this is a fun one, and you all can think of your answers and share when we open up at the end. At what point for you all, so I think we're all clear that Xena and Gabrielle are a couple.
No, Xena just needed water.
And kissing someone's the only way to share water. So,
Most efficient.
Most efficient, that's true. So, I wanted to ask you all, for which point in the series do you feel is the moment that they went from subtext to actually, where the show is clearly saying, yes, we're together? Is there a particular episode or moment where you feel like it happens for you?
It was really good from the beginning.
Yeah.
I think the quest, for sure. I mean, we're going to talk in the streets, and then I'm going to lean over and kiss you. Because I do that.
But it wasn't really Xena. It was a man.
Or was it? I have to agree though, the body swap, that was I hesitate on saying that that's the part that made it canon. It's definitely canon for me, but we'll come back to this other part later. But like you were saying before, depending on when you came in, like I watched this as a kid and I was just like, yeah, kick-ass woman, I like this show. I missed it completely that there was any queer element. I don't think I even knew what being gay was. So to rewatch it and miss that part and then go, wait a second, how'd I miss this? I think that makes it a little trickier for me. But yeah, the body swap, you just kind of go, really?
Well, the writers did some interesting and very strategic things. So the writers were sort of taking the campiness of the show and like that's the genre of camp in order to make direct nods at their queerness, right? So there's like a fantastic episode, for those of you who haven't seen that episode, where a TV reporter goes back in time, and you know what I'm talking about, and interviews Xena Gabrielle, and at the very end, the tail end of the episode, you know what line I'm talking about, tail end of the episode, the TV reporter asks Xena Gabrielle, so are you a couple? And then, like, Lucy Laws is just sort of like, well, technically. And then the camera there's like recording problems, and then the episode cuts out. And so they sort of use moments like that to say, we know that you are reading the text in this way, to the extent that it's so subtext that it's practically main text. So I think that was a point in that episode actually where I thought the writers know that we're doing this. They're like, and they're very much aware. And for me, that was when it felt very canon.
I feel like it's interesting, this discussion, because I feel like when I saw Callisto and then went back and where the scene where the episode where Gabrielle's like on nut bread and Xena's like climb up my body, and where Gabrielle's like, you're so beautiful, just like I feel like they were pretty much. I mean, there was a lesbian producer, or, co-producer on the show. I feel like it's pretty much from the beginning, and I remember, I think the first interview I saw of Lucy Lawless, she was like thanking her lesbian fans. This was like in, I think, 97 or I don't know. And she's like, you're what makes the show cool. And I think that also being involved in the fan fiction, I felt like, we didn't even need to, I didn't feel like I need to, or looking back on it more, like I don't need to engage in when it became canon or whatever. I think it was, we co-created that show and we continue to co-create it. Kind of similar to, the Clexa fan fiction. Yeah.
Well, one of the best things about Xena is that you can take out of it what you need. So if you want that subtext relationship, you can have it. But if you don't want that subtext relationship, you don't have to have that either. And that's the great thing about that. You can take whatever you need out of it from that whole entire show.
And Liz Friedman, who's I guess one of the lesbians, like the main lesbian behind the show, in an interview, she even talks about walking that line, where the queer content goes right over the heads of straight viewers. But if you're a queer audience, you know exactly what they're talking about, and you pick up on every little thing, and you know that those details are part of the text.
Right. But does it still go over? Maybe I just don't know any straight people. Does it still like straight young people watching the show, would they think really?
It does.
Yeah.
Sure.
I told my mom that I was coming here and that I was going to be on this panel, and she goes, "Why? That's not queer." Okay, Mom.
So for me, as someone who watched the show seeking queer content, I didn't know it was later introduced. I just thought it was in the first episode. So in Sins of the Past, when Gabrielle says she'd never let a man close enough to do her, you're like, oh, she's gonna seduce Xena. So for me, clearly Gabrielle, was this little girl who wanted to leave home and like instantly fell in love with Xena and was kind of having this moment of self-discovery because she knew she didn't fit in her village. And Xena was this moment of awakening for her. So for me, it was in the first episode. And then I learned later that the first episode from Rob Tabert and Liz Friedman's point of view was Altered States. The Nutbread episode was when they intentionally put it in.
Where they put the quote subtext in.
Yeah. All right. So we also wanted to ask, when did you see Xena making efforts towards inclusion in terms of what was represented in the show?
So, it was interesting because I think in the 90s, in season 1, we find out that Xena's first love is Marcus, a black man. And there are other points, I think, throughout the series where Laoma is an excellent example. For me, Laoma was a really important character because I'd never seen a three-dimensional Asian character in TV before. I'd never seen that. And I was so moved by that particular storyline because they share an underwater kiss. They were sharing air.
Not water this time, air.
They were passing air mouth to mouth to each other underwater. And for me, being like a young queer person who's also Asian, first of all, I didn't know Asians could be queer. And because I'd never seen that. And then also because I'd never seen an Asian on TV. And so have Laoma not only, so she's not a regular, she has recurring episodes, but she had such an important impact on Xena's philosophy and point of view that you understand, here's this incredibly powerful, intelligent, beautiful Asian woman who taught Xena what she knows.
And created Taoism. She was Lao Tzu.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really important to me. I guess her character arc. There were other sort of like small nods to inclusion throughout the series, and I just mentioned Here She Comes Miss Amphipolis, which is the pageant episode. Karen Dior, who had HIV/AIDS, and people knew that she had HIV/AIDS. Again, this is the 90s, and in the episode, spoiler alert, Lucy Lawless kisses her on the mouth.
Right. And says she was, and talks about it in press. Like, yeah, that was, yeah.
This was oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just want to say one of my favorite lines in the whole series is in where Xena says to Lao Ma, when she's with Boreas, and she says to Lao Ma, like, oh, that's my piece of meat you're looking at, and Lao Ma's like, I don't eat meat.
Vegetarian?
But I don't know, it all depends on your perspective. Like, I don't think it was mind-blowing that Lucy Lawless had a black boyfriend. I mean, my mother was married to a black man, obviously. Anyway, so none of that was really I mean, that part wasn't, I didn't think it was a big deal. It's like the 90s. Like, for me, it's like the 90s already, I felt like the trans character was very cutting edge, and I felt like I'd seen Asian characters, Asian women before that, but maybe I loved that they made Cleopatra black. Yeah.
Xena's the first time I can think of on a genre show where a trans actress was hired to play a trans character. So that's something I wanted to acknowledge.
And she went to the beauty pageant. Badass.
Anyone else on that one? Okay. So, my next question is, how did Xena and Gabrielle legitimate queer relationships in genre television?
I think the important thing to remember when here at this con, and when you're think about every queer woman ship that you know of on television. How many of them are the protagonists? Usually we get queer women ships, and they're side characters as part of an ensemble cast, and so it's like this sort of plot B. You do not get series, and to this day, there has been no equivalent in television where you have both of the main protagonists for 6 seasons. You get their story arc as a couple, and so I think in that sense, Xena helps, like, really is the standard of what we should be looking at. I mean, Willow and Tara came up next on Buffy, right? And I remember that being a very, like, I watched Buffy as well, and I guess in that sense, there were other shows that, where there were queer women ships that were canon, okay? So, like, if you want...
Babylon 5, actually.
Oh, Babylon 5.
Yeah, I'm not totally aging myself. I mean, it was very, but one of the main characters, sexy Commander Ivanova, has this relationship with the female telepath, and it's all about the fact that she's a telepath. That's the issue. But it's very, you blink and you'll miss it. Mm-hmm. So, of course, they kill Talia. So,
I do know that, and this is, well, I don't know for sure. This is a rumor that back in the day, people like Joss Whedon and Chris Carter, X-Files, and other show creators were watching our fandom, because there was just this explosion of, we were the first fandom really that was created and grew up online. And they watched us, and I think that might have also set the stage for, these lesbians like this content. So I think we did influence a lot of show creators in that way. They saw our fandom and they decided to try to bring us in.
So the next question is getting into the series finale. So I wanted to give anyone a chance to exit that does not want to know how the series ends. Okay. Y'all, I know you've had 20 years to watch it, but we are trying to get people to watch the show that haven't watched it before. Okay.
Get your people going.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. So, would you consider Xena and Gabrielle's relationship to be queer baiting? And, this is getting into the series finale, do you consider the ending of the series to bury your gays?
So like I said in my introduction, I run an online queer hub, and our thing is to make sure that it's not queer bait. So I love this question because people are split 50-50. The first part, is it queer baiting? It's tricky. Because Liz, the executive producer and writer, you know, because she was on it and made sure to put those nods and made sure that that subtext was there for the community who needed it. In the 90s, there wasn't as much freedom to do with a character what you necessarily wanted them to do. I make the argument a lot, you know, if the show was made today, what it would look like, and I think it would be very different. I think that it was more subtext than queer baiting at the time because queer baiting didn't exist. And so going to the second question of whether or not it was bury your gays, because again, spoiler, Xena does die at the end. She's killed gruesomely. So there's that. Well, you know, is it the bury your gays? Is it the lesbian death trope? But I don't think it is because A, the queer baiting thing didn't exist, and B, in this sense, they didn't kill that character off because they were gay or because they were queer. That character had to be killed off for whatever other reason, for the show to end. You know, because I think with a show like this, especially with the fandom backing it like this fandom, they could keep writing and writing and writing. And so where comes that point of, okay, well, this is where we want to end it because the fans otherwise are just going to keep hounding us and, you know, you want to move on.
Yeah. So I completely disagree. I think the point, and this is not about the queer baiting, because those are two different issues, and I think they shouldn't be conflated. And I think I understand your point about the queer baiting, and I agree that it wasn't. But they did not have to. They don't usually kill off the gay characters because they're gay, you know. But they don't, you know. But they still bury your lesbians. I really want to call it that because we're talking about queer women anyway. So they killed Xena so brutally. Like, why do we have to watch her, you know, get, you know, pierced by 10,000 arrows and then hung, you know, headless from? It was just so incredibly brutal. And there are so many other ways to end a show. You don't need to use that to end a show. And I think, and it was so upsetting to me and the people who were watching it at the time. It was devastating. And I remember when, you know, I haven't been invested in a pairing in a TV show since the 100. And so, you know, and I watched that episode with 307, so, you know, scarred by, we have the number in our head. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was like, oh. But my reaction was like, well, they killed Xena too, you know. Like, of course, this is how they do us. And when one of the things that's been so empowering about the Clexa fandom and the whole movement that's come up out of it is like, you know, younger folks are like, you can't do us like this, you know. And I was like, thank you, you know. I was like, because I think it was a generational thing or whatever, I was like, oh, here we go again, oh, yeah. And I just felt so empowered, and I'm going off point, but anyway, go ahead. I completely disagree, that was the point.
But that's why I like this question, because like I said, people are split 50-50. But I disagree. I think that what happened with Lexa is very, very different than what happened with Xena. Lexa's character was written off the show in a way that wasn't necessary, especially because she wasn't the star of the show. She wasn't. She wasn't even on the credits. She was guest star, and it had stayed that way. It wasn't like she had come on to the show as a guest star and then become a part of the show, and then they killed her off like Tara. See, now Tara, I would make the argument that Tara didn't necessarily need to die.
But just because it's not queer baiting doesn't mean that it wasn't a bury or lesbian.
Exactly.
Because I mean, why do they have to kill her? First of all, why do they have to kill her like that? you know, you don't have to do that to end your your show. It's like, okay, and this is how we all end every show. We're gonna like decapitate the lesbian and pull her full of arrows and have her give up her soul, because we've already seen her come back from the death before, for some ridiculous cause that made no sense in the context of the show. I just feel like you can find another way to end that show.
So I want to add some nuance to this discussion. And I think when we talk about the bury your gays, bury your lesbians trope, we need to think about what criteria are we looking for. And so when I think about, does a show meet, like my personal definition of meeting that trope, who does it betray? Does it betray the character or does it betray the fans? And if it betrays both the character and the fans in the way that Lex's death did, then I'm especially offended. I don't, in my opinion, Xena, so the way that she was killed off, she did not need to be decapitated. It was gruesome, it was grotesque, that didn't need to happen. But the fact that she died, I believe that she could have died to redeem herself. And I believe that that actually forwards the character arc. So for me, if somebody's death, and I guess in another example is Root from Person of Interest. Her death, did it betray the fans? Yes. But did it betray the character? Not necessarily, because Root comes back as the machine. So I think if we think about it in that way, like if we complicate, maybe bury your gaze is sort of a spectrum. And there are different types of betrayals that can take place, and you can decide how far on one end of the spectrum a particular character death is from.
We are now at the point where we invited the audience.
Let me throw just two things out. One thing, Lucy has stated many times that they were terribly surprised and upset over how the fans reacted to that last episode. That they did not do it to agree with the fans in any way. And secondly, Rob has always stated that that was not supposed to be the last episode. That was not supposed to be the ending.
That's actually true.
And Xena was supposed to come back. They had planned on doing movies, but for whatever reason it didn't happen. So they were planning on bringing her back, because we all know that Xena comes back.
Question, I'll do my best to repeat the question so everyone can hear. If it's a comment, you can just try to project. Yeah.
Jackie, can you tell us about Xena Retreat?
I can.
The question was, Jackie, can you tell us about Xena Retreat?
I can. So Xena Retreat came out of a bunch of fans who went to the last convention in 2015 and said, now what are we going to do? We love each other, we found our tribe, we found our home, so now what are we going to do? So we spent 2 years putting together a retreat, a place where all people, all Xena fans can come, feel safe, have a good time, and celebrate all things Xena. So we go into the California mountains, we have archery, we have high ropes, we have gourmet food, we have pillow top mattresses, we have some of the actresses that come, we have Steve Sears come, we have conversations about the show. You never know, you can be sitting at dinner and the next thing you're having these very same conversations that we're having today. So check out the business card that I gave everybody in coming to this list. One of the things that we like the most is that we've put together a really accepting place. I made Lynn cry earlier when we were talking about everybody comes, everybody feels accepted, everybody feels welcome.
I've been to 16 conventions and more other events than I can count, and this was the most positive Xena-based experience I've ever had. It was amazing.
Is the Xenite fandom, is that like the first fan fiction and shipping lifestyle? I mean, because I can't think of any show or whatever before Xena that we had fan fiction and people were shipping and there was wars, shipping
online?
wars.
You mean queer?
Yeah.
Queer?
Or overall.
Do you mind if I repeat the question? So everyone can hear. So you were asking, is Xena the first fandom that had fan fiction and shipping? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Online? Yeah, I think we were the first big lesbian fiction shipping fandom, but Star Trek actually had, before the internet, after the original series ended, what, in 70, was it 70, 71, whatever, anyway, they kept the Kirk Spock ship alive through these paper fanzines that they would take to events and conventions and things and pass out.
And those are a bunch of homophobic women who wrote that stuff. Because coming out of Babylon, the lesbians who wanted to write the lesbian story for Babylon 5 were really shunned. So it's like this weird thing where it's like these straight women write male-male ships.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I mean, they're not the only one, but mainly, you know, and yeah.
Yes.
I just, something that the ending you're describing, how, you know, Xena was killed off, it was in a brutal way. To me, it seems like maybe down through history, those who represent a strong danger to those in power get killed excessively in view. Because, say, Christ.
Exactly, and so the point, but did you say Christ?
Well, like, you know,
Oh,
like,
okay,
even
sorry,
though-
I'm not religious, but no, but I get your point.
Me either. Like,
Okay.
I'm saying as a story.
Yeah. And the idea that, you know, Rob Tapper did not intend to have that impact on the audience, that does nothing for me, because people's decisions and choices are informed by the air we breathe, by the way we think about things. You know, it reminds me of like, what's his name saying, I didn't mean Jar Jar Binks to be a racist portrayal. It's like, it doesn't matter what you mean. You grew up reading the same stuff, watching the same movies, you know, you've been informed by Step and Fetch It, whether you know it or not, you know? And so, like, brutally kill the powerful woman warrior by decapitating her? Come on.
But it was a great story. And the Finn was a great story. And it was a brutal ending, but the story was still phenomenal. It was still a phenomenal story.
I viewed it as a hero's death.
Yeah.
She's freed the souls of tens of thousands of people and redeemed herself for her very, very dark past. She's a murderer. She's a mass murderer.
And her past gets darker and darker and darker as the show went on. It was just intense. But yeah, it's a redemption story. And I think one of the things that's compelling about Xena is, you know, she'll never be redeemed until she's dead. So I get that point. You know, it just really didn't have to go down like that. And
I know a lot about Xena too, but I always thought the theme of the whole 6 years was Gabrielle teaching Xena she can be redeemed by not dying, but by forgiving herself.
Right.
And the finale went completely opposite of that.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
have to die tragically to redeem yourself.
Right, and that's what Gabrielle was trying to teach. And I agree with you completely. And so I think that Xena felt like, I don't think she learned what the lesson that Gabrielle was trying to teach her.
That's the finale. That's her.
See, and I actually kind of agree more with where you're going, because we do see the martyr thing happen a lot, especially though, and the other reason why I don't look at this as, you know, a bury your gaze thing is because they use historical fiction so well in both Xena and Hercules. The mythology and the history behind it is done so well, and this would have been a fairly accurate portrayal of what would have happened to a woman, be somebody who's not respecting authority. So it's accurate, it's brutal, absolutely, but that goes with the times. So it's terrible that we had to see it, but again, I'm separating the queerness from the actual death in that sense.
There was a hand over here a while ago.
I just had a quick question in terms of subtext, because I know I grew up with Xena as well. I watched it from the beginning. And, and one thing I've noticed as I get older is that I feel like maybe the generation of queer women today, or young queer women today, I wonder if they understand the subtext that we grew up with. If they really understand having to find yourself in those tiny, like in between the margins of the lines. And I wonder what the experience is in terms of, I know you asked, watching the show while it was on or coming to it later. I wonder in the reference of subtext versus main text and how we view the world and how we exist in the world and find ourselves in the world and how that's changed over time.
I think that if I had seen this show, not as a child, but just as I am now and know who I am and being an adult, it wouldn't have gone over my head at all. It wouldn't be subtext at all. And I think that you see that a lot with the older generations who came into this much later. It's right there, it's very obvious. So I don't think that they can understand, because we are now in a society that it's not so, it's not crumbs. We don't get crumbs anymore, which is good.
But that's pretty recent. I feel like paying attention to young queer women, you know, who are like decades younger than me, I still see them feeling like, oh, I just saw that and finally I see myself. So I think that this is a kind of a recent shift. So I think that there is some overlap.
So the one question we didn't get to is, should there be a Xena reboot? And I think touching on the queer baiting question is, if Xena comes back, it needs to be an open relationship.
Yeah.
And there was a failed reboot at NBC the last few years ago, and they were going to be an open relationship. That's not why the reboot was canceled. They were going to be together. And so I think now, if you made the show with this level of subtext, I think that it probably would be queer baiting to, you know, like some of the other shows we can think of, like Swan Queen. So I personally just wanted to make the pitch that I think we need more stories about Xena and Gabrielle where it is canon and that is the reason for the show existing. So we are out of time and have to wrap up there, but please do come up and talk to us or chat with us in the hall, and we love talking all things Xena.